Today, I'm going to show you some of the worst habits digital marketers build that destroy productivity and creativity. And each habit I share will get increasingly more destructive, leading to more severe consequences. So first, we need to talk about a habit that might seem harmless, but can be an absolute productivity and self-esteem killer. And that's compulsively checking and chasing metrics. Now, there's nothing wrong with checking metrics on your digital assets, but when you find yourself incessantly refreshing feeds to check real-time traffic, or if someone new liked your post, that's when you know that your habit has morphed from mere curiosity into a damaging obsession. Things usually start with innocent checking. Then, this quickly turns into seeking validation in these numbers. And then some will go as deep as defining their self-worth in these vanity metrics. Now, when you chase these metrics, things never turn out well. They usually won't match up to your expectations, even if you reach your goals. And it doesn't just feel like a professional setback, it feels personal. And that's a dangerous path you don't want to go down because traffic, views, likes, comments, and followers are not going to pay the bills. Now, if you're on this path, then no problem. There are two things you can do to get back on the right track. Number one, pinpoint the metrics that align with your business goals. For example, on YouTube, I don't really care how many views or subscribers our channel gets. Actually, that's a lie because the dopamine hit is unreal. But in all seriousness, what matters to us is that potential users discover and become familiar with our tools. And some of those people will go on to convert. So the main metric that I focus on is customers. Now, because that's my primary focus, the vast majority of our tutorials are centered around problems that our software helps people solve. And as a result, YouTube sends us a consistent stream of signups. The second thing you can do is to schedule time for metrics checking. So for me, I personally check registrations from YouTube once a month, so it doesn't take away from my focus. Now, as simple as these things may sound, simplicity can be a digital marketer's superpower. And that's why the next group of people struggle with a habit that can literally paralyze your marketing efforts. And that's overcomplicating things. Now, there are three things that often get overcomplicated in internet marketing: tactics, strategies, and messaging or copywriting. And when you overcomplicate tactics, you often get stuck in analysis paralysis. So rather than actually getting work done and moving a project forward, you waste time pondering on the million what-ifs. When you overcomplicate strategies, it's hard for teams to understand and build synergy in their work. And this leads to something even worse: misalignment. And when you overcomplicate messaging, your marketing campaigns are just plain ineffective. Simplicity is a key component to communication, and a big part of digital marketing is to clearly communicate a brand's message to a target audience in a way that's easy to understand and remember. Take the launch of Apple's original iPod as an example. When Apple introduced the iPod in 2001, they weren't the first company to create a digital music player.
No one has really found the recipe yet.
But they simplified it in a way that resonated with music lovers all around the world. At their music event, they didn't announce the iPod as a revolutionary 5GB hard drive that can hold up to 1,000 audio files in MP3 or WAV format if the files are all equally 4.2 megabytes with a bitrate of 320 kilobits per second. Instead, the late Steve Jobs stood in front of a packed auditorium and said,
1,000 songs. And it goes right in my pocket.
1,000 songs in your pocket. The simplicity of this message aligned all elements of their marketing campaign, from advertisements to in-store displays, creating a coherent narrative that was easy for consumers to understand, relate to, and even remember 22 years later. Now, while overcomplicating marketing activities can leave you unproductive, stagnant, and frustrated, there's a habit even more volatile that can raise straight up chaos, and that's overreacting to industry news. When we stress and eventually hit a state of panic, all rational thinking is out the door. Take the release of ChatGPT as an example. News publications and people across social media called it a Google search killer, and so by proxy, an SEO killer. Others even said ChatGPT will replace the need for lawyers. But sure enough, Google, SEOs, and lawyers are still here today. Now, news-induced panic usually won't cause any real long-term damage, but the same can't be said for the next bad habit, which can damage both your stress levels and finances. And that's trying to scale too early. In the world of business and marketing, people are obsessed with the idea of scale. The thing is, if your business or infrastructure isn't ready to handle the results of scale, then disaster might be waiting on the other end. Take Groupon, the daily deal site, as an example. They scaled their marketing so fast that in 2010, Forbes declared them as the fastest growing company ever. They went public a year later in 2011 and had the second biggest tech IPO in history, only next to Google. In fact, by the end of their IPO day, they were valued at more than $16 billion. They scaled their company faster than anyone had ever done, but it was way too early. While Groupon was the titan of scaling lead generation, they scaled into what Wharton School of Business called a flawed business model. And today, their company is valued at around $394 million, roughly 98% lower than the day of their IPO. So if you feel the pressure to scale now, before you do anything, make sure you're scaling something that's already been proven to work and that can handle the load of scaling. For example, don't try and scale your blog content until you found a proven method to get traffic that converts. Now, one other thing that played a part in Groupon's demise was the rise of competitors like Living Social, Google Offers, and Buy With Me. But these companies and products no longer exist. And that's what happens when you get so desperate that you become a victim to the next habit. And that's copying other marketers. Now, to be fair, there's nothing that's truly original anymore, but there's a fine line between inspiration and just straight up copying. And in my opinion, inspiration is taking an existing idea and infusing it with your unique perspective and insights so that it's in line with your brand. And on the other hand, straight up copying is replicating another idea without adding any new value or perspective. Now, there's obviously moral and ethical dilemmas here. In fact, copying marketers can often be a catalyst to worse habits, which can lead to big fines and even jail time. But before we get to that story, we need to discuss why this habit is so tempting and the bigger impact it can have on you as a digital marketer and even as a human being. So here's how a copycat marketer's journey usually goes. They start with good intentions along the road of inspiration. They borrow some ideas from successful marketing campaigns and then try to add their own twist to their own project. But unfortunately, they don't get the results they're expecting. And rather than trying to iterate on their failed campaign, they decide that it'd just be easier to steal someone else's hard work. They're now making the shift from inspiration to imitation. And all of a sudden, they've gone viral. The dopamine hit is unreal. People love their work. No, they love the marketer. So they do it again and again and again. And while they might get some short-term wins, what gets missed is that deep down inside, they're suffocating their ability to truly create. Copying doesn't just harm our careers or reputation, it erodes our authenticity. And while copying might give you that dopamine hit for the short run, it won't last long. In fact, copycat marketing is often the gateway to the worst habit digital marketers build, and that's ignoring ethical considerations. Now, when it comes to ethics, there's a line, but not everyone sees that line in the same place or in the same way. You see, when ethics begin to get ignored, it usually starts innocently with pushing the boundaries of so-called best practices. Then we start to see more dishonesty, like stretching the truth about a product's capabilities. And as these practices become more and more routine, the line that separates ethical from unethical begins to blur. What was once a one-off decision in the name of inspiration becomes a pattern, a habit, and then business as usual. When dishonesty gets normalized, it creates a culture where more ethical violations are not just tolerated, but encouraged in pursuit of success. And before long, some marketers cross the point of no return. They engage in false advertising and manipulate consumers with misleading information. And in the most extreme cases, these behaviors escalate to crime like fraud and Ponzi schemes. Take Lee McKenna, an alleged fraudster who convinced his victims he was an internet millionaire. According to Daily Mail, McKenna promised that for a £2,000 sign-up fee, his followers would earn up to £1,000 a day using the tips in his promotional videos. And these promotional marketing videos featured him in huge mansions, around expensive cars, making him look successful, when in fact, these were just rentals. Once the jig was up, he was sent to prison for fraud. Now, the story of McKenna may sound extreme, but it's actually not. Over the past 2 decades, there have been tons of so-called marketing gurus that started by telling seemingly harmless white lies. But over time, their success and audience grew, and as a result, some fell into the next bad habit, and then the next, and then the next. Now, I'm just some dude on the internet, but it's my opinion that true success in digital marketing can't be measured through likes, shares, followers, or even dollars. In my opinion, digital marketing is a much more powerful skill set. It enables you to build trust and influence at scale. So I encourage you to focus on authentic marketing rather than quick wins, because digital marketing needs more creative innovators, industry leaders, and trusted voices.